Oh, that's a good deal, though.
Out the door.
It's nice that you have that option.
You know what?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the work session of the Salisbury City Council on April the 3rd. First up on the agenda, Ms. Phillips is not here, so we're going to... Oh, she is here. I saw the pocketbook, but I wasn't sure if it was Mr. Moulds.
Really? It is
I wouldn't take that if I was you, Mike.
2017.
Sorry.
It's the right color for it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm back discussing the HVAC units and the multi-unit structures.
Yep.
So last time we were here, we discussed how to, if we could put them into the multi-units, and we reached a consensus that it would really not be feasible to put them in the older structures. And then we also talked about putting it into the tenants' rates lease addendum that we already have drafted. And then also discussed that I would meet with SAPOA to get the general feel of the members and bring that back to you guys. So I did meet with them last Thursday at their monthly meeting, and they really liked the idea of it going into the tenants' rights lease addendum. They really liked it. They appreciated me coming from and bringing it back, the information from council. They actually felt like that it would protect them. Just say that somebody had a lung disease and they were exposed from someone next door, and that it would give them protection if they were sued. So they want us to really move forward with it. So we can, I'm ready to go ahead and put the language in. Just wanted to get the consensus from you guys if that's what we want to do.
Comments from anybody? No? Everybody okay to move it? Okay, work on it, and we'll see it at the next work session?
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Moulds, you're up. Good afternoon, how are you?
What's on your workshop agenda is a budget amendment to take a reimbursement request we got from the Board of Ed for some streetlight installations that we helped with, and get that put into a streetlight account, cover our electric bill for the streetlights. This goes back to the original work on Bennett High School. There was a requirement to put streetlights on College Avenue, 5 of them. And at the time, during the construction, they put conduit in, and these were going to be streetlights owned by Delmarva, so we'd be paying a tariff on them. At some point, the Delmarva changed some of their standards and everything, so that kind of lingered. When I got here, we sat down with the Board of Ed and worked out an arrangement where they would pay for the materials, and we could do the install. And what we did was we installed a electric service and added 2 additional streetlights further down the street and put them all on our meter, which would allow us to also convert the streetlights to LED. So those streetlights are owned and maintained by the city and are going to be more energy efficient. So we worked out that with the Board of Ed with their reimbursement, and they're providing that reimbursement of $14,941 for materials. And the resolution or the ordinance will be there to put that into a streetlight account.
Any questions? Okay,
Okay,
good,
thank you.
Mr. Garrett, come on up. How are you, Bill?
How was everyone this morning, or this afternoon, I guess?
Good.
It's one of those days. Okay. So when we last met about this, there are a few different, I guess 3 different changes, all of which were on page 4. First was line number 89 through 90, which is adding in the verbiage about accordance to departmental policies and procedures. The next was the renumbering of section 7 to 6 due to a oversight typo, as it were. And then, see, the next one was on line 99, which is adding the use of hands-free devices as being allowed for those who, want to use them with this, with either their city or their personal phone.
Those were the three that we asked. Any questions from anybody? Okay. We okay to proceed? All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Short and sweet.
Yep. You're up. How are you, Gloria?
I think.
I don't think we've given Mr. McClellan and company time to get here, so I guess it's
Okay.
just me. The Planning Commission reviewed a text amendment request for Westwood Commerce Park. This is a little bit different than some of the text amendments that you have probably seen in the past because it truly only affects one zoning area in the city. Most of the time, when we look at text amendments, we have to look at all of the areas that are zoned R8 or all of the areas that are zoned commercial. This one just affects Westwood Planned Development District. They have a potential buyer for a lot that wants to do commercial truck sales. And those things don't lend themselves to being everything inside of a showroom. So they need outside display of equipment. And they submitted a definition for heavy equipment that included certain things. And we looked at some other definitions in other zoning codes and kind of married the two districts together so that potentially in the future we could have someone out there with a boat sales or with other heavy equipment. So we have included their definition plus what we found. The owners of the park, who are represented by Jay Pierce, are in support of the amendment that's been requested. And just for some additional background, when this planned development district was adopted back in 2008, we crafted the text that's in the code based on what the applicants asked for at that time. And they asked for the uses permitted inherently and by special exception in the neighborhood business district, regional commercial district, and light business and institutional districts to be permitted uses in the planned development district. And we did exclude a couple of things like neighborhood shopping centers, apartments, hospitals that we didn't think would necessarily fit in a commercial planned development district. So over time, since 2008, the owners and realtors working for the owners have found that circumstances have changed, the market has changed over time, and Mr. McClellan told the Planning Commission that they have had some inquiries for uses that required outdoor display or outdoor storage, and currently those things are not permitted, so they would like to amend the code so that they might be permitted. This district requires approval of a comprehensive development plan for every site that as it develops in that district, so that the Planning Commission would be able to impose conditions such as screening of the storage areas with things like fencing with slats or with fencing with slats and perhaps landscaping, but all those kinds of things would be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
When this came before the Planning Commission, one of the issues that I had was, if you remember, was they're going to, after they repair some things, they put them in the yard, and it says, will be promptly removed. And I said, my definition of prompt and my grandson's definition of prompt may be two different things. So I think we agreed that it can be tightened up when we get the
Planning
actual
Commission,
Planning Commission.
yes.
We can put a time period in there as opposed to just promptly.
Also, Mr. McClellan explained to the commission too that day that the owners still have tight control over the lots out there, and one of the uses that's out there had some wrecked vehicles parked, and they told them it had to go. they didn't allow them to leave them. They stayed long enough that the owner said, it's time for those to go, you gotta get rid of them. And I was hoping that they would be here.
Westwood annexed my neighborhood. Sorry. It's just the thought, if it was that easy, you'd think everybody'd be doing it.
Well, I was hoping, because I didn't ask them at the
They still
planning
own the
commission and
land.
no one else asked, I don't recall if the requirements are for there to eventually be a property owners association out there. There are quite a few undeveloped lots out there.
Yeah.
You know, the economy being what it's been since 2008, things haven't moved as quickly as they thought they might. And I don't know if there's a provision, and maybe they will be at the regular hearing with the council so that we can ask. I suspect eventually there may be a property owners association out there to help enforce stuff like that. But in the meantime, the owners are doing it.
Is this change gonna as fast or less fast or more fast than what we did for the church, which seemed to be
This should be,
Much slower.
This is much slower
I'm joking.
or
I'm
faster?
no, it should move along pretty
Okay.
quickly. Any other questions or comments?
I have two.
Mr. Mayor?
Gloria, two questions. One, do we know who the commercial vehicle sales company is?
I can't recall the name. It's Trans.
Okay, so
something or
it's
other.
not just Bar International Relocating or
No,
something
no,
like
no, no,
that?
no.
Okay,
No,
good.
it's-
It's a new company.
it's a new company.
Okay, that's good. And then second, I recall the owners selling a portion recently to a commercial development group that was gonna do highway commercial, and they've started to cut down a lot of trees.
That
They're
is
gonna
the property
they're gonna
in
do
question.
Hotels and restaurant pads out there. I'm not sure that these two things would conflict at all, because you got the same thing going on the north end, but is their plan changing? Because this is more in line with what they're doing today, or is their plan to accommodate whoever shows up? Or do we not know?
I'm not sure we know the answer to that. In this particular case, they've had an inquiry, and it's on
Okay.
the property where the trees were cut
Gotcha.
last year. I think that lot is much larger than they plan to develop,
huge.
as I understood it.
Huge.
And so they have this request, and they are trying to massage the text of the code so that they can accommodate this potential buyer.
Okay.
But yes, I understand that lot in particular is a large lot, and at this time, the Planning Commission has not received a development plan showing either how it's going to be subdivided, or how this site is going to look, or how the balance of the property is
Okay.
going to look.
Just the text amendment.
Right, just the text
Proposed.
amendment at this time.
And
Thank
each of those would have to come before our planning board.
Correct,
Right.
correct. They can probably, well, they may be able to subdivide it, although I expect the subdivision will have to come to the Planning Commission because there are already more than 5 lots there. So to subdivide a site,
They'd have to
I
come
think
back.
John McClellan said this site is like 35 acres.
Yeah.
To subdivide it, that should come to the commission because they're modifying a previously approved plat. And then however the different lots are proposed for development, the code does require all of that to come to the commission.
Okay.
So we'll see their access points on what street, where the building's going to go.
I think this is, it kind of gives them a little more flexibility to attract buyers. So I'm supportive of this.
April?
I am too.
Okay. Okay,
All right,
thank you.
we'll work with
Move that
this
forward.
office to get it on the regular schedule.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Tell John to hurry up.
Let's see. Chief's not here yet, so let's,
Hey, you wanna, Mike's got something else.
yeah, Mike, that's, we're gonna move it up.
The last workshop, we had talked about the community garden there at Waterside.
Right.
And what we've done then is pull together the resolution and lease agreement. I'll admit I took French in high school, which didn't do me any good. So we've got the Committee de Apoyo a los Trabajadores Agrícolas the Farm Workers Support Committee, which I conveniently refer to as CADA. Did I do okay?
You didn't take Spanish either.
That's for darn sure. So I probably, like I said, I should have.
Okay.
But, so we put the resolution together, it has that language on it. The lease, one of the questions that Martin Hutchinson's, who's helping them move this along, asked, the previous leases were 3 years, and talked to the mayor, and mayor's proposed a 10-year lease.
Well,
for
they
this one.
requested 25.
25.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah, you're right.
And we-
Okay.
I talked to the council president, and 10 seemed more reasonable.
And then you
Which I think is actually a reasonable term for future. 3 years is pretty short for these gardens that we want to stick around.
for the effort they're putting in building the beds and things like that. Then we've got the exhibit that shows the actual lease area, that will be, and we'll mark that out, a survey with rods and everything, and the water service extension is relatively easy because we have the drinking fountain and water there, so we can move ahead with that when the time comes. So, we're ready to put that on the agenda as far as getting the lease moving ahead so they can get going. There is the one outstanding issue we've got to work out, concerns is the access.
Yeah.
There was, in your packet was, we researched to see were there any other lease or easements. That easement agreement was in there, was something that was developed when they were looking to make improvements to the church, and they wanted to have parking along Parsons, which we have a utility easement there. So there were 23 spaces that they wanted to put in there, and that was what that easement was granted for. It wasn't specific in terms of an access across it. They had actually, we researched the thing and had plans for what they wanted to do, but it never really went anywhere. So it kind of died. But you can see Parsons was where the easement was for the spaces. And they actually had showing some parking spaces on the property, on our property, for additional parking there, which never really got addressed in terms of, so, and it doesn't really show any other access going across there like there is now. But this thing's died, it wouldn't move anywhere now with these stormwater requirements and everything. Anybody wants to look at that in more detail. So, that was one of the questions, whether there was something existing that could be, continued to be utilized. But because we've got a different entity that will be leasing the property and how that access, they may object to that, may not, we don't know. So we're looking for some movement in there. I think last time, Councilman Jackson, you thought you might have a contact with the Tabernacle?
Yes, I do have a contact. They haven't responded. And they've also, Martin Hutchinson has also contacted him. So I'm gonna try again to see if I can get, in touch with them again to see what we can do, how we can work it out.
I mean, I looked online, their Facebook page doesn't really have much on it. And most of the other stuff's your standard yellow pages and things
And
like
I
that.
think I remember trying to reach out maybe 2 years ago
Yeah.
and not getting a return phone call at any point.
Yeah, and I did it at the first year, but I know some members of that church, their family, so maybe I can
Yeah.
tap into that.
Let's keep trying to reach out,
Yeah.
find mutual agreement.
I don't think that it's not that they don't want to do anything, because they're very active in their community.
Sure.
When they're in that church, they're very active, so I think it would be something they would want to invest in, but it's just connecting.
Should we be, is there a concern that we won't have access if, no?
I think if we don't have access, we cut a hole in the fence and, make the curb cut. and
Okay, so it shouldn't hold up our decision.
I say we
Like
go
the
move
image,
it.
Yeah.
the image in your
Yeah.
document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
we're
what it's gonna be. so.
Directly
Yeah.
across Marine Road.
Yeah.
And
So
at
we
the,
cut-
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying at the Parks and Rec meeting, we met at Waterside Park
Nice.
last month, and everybody's supportive of the idea. So it was a good meeting.
Well, could I ask you one question? Okay, if you're gonna do that and we're not, getting a response from the pastors of the church or the parishioners of the church, how would parking, what would parking be for them?
Oh, no, they,
In the plan,
It's in the plan.
It's drawn out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
That's just,
Are you still gonna
that's
just
all
do
on
it?
city, that's all on city
Okay,
property.
Okay, that's all
Wouldn't
I
affect
wanted to
them.
know,
We
yeah.
would just have a different entrance point.
Entrance, you'll come in off of the Marine Road.
I think ideally, if we could work out a relationship with them and we just keep
It would
the
be
existing
easier,
entrance,
yeah.
that's ideal.
It would be easier.
But if,
Yeah,
you know,
would
if we
be.
either can't ever talk to them or can't get an agreement from them, then, you know, we'll just go into city property a different direction.
Okay.
Okay.
Shouldn't hold. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have consensus? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. Let's skip down to
No. Oh, she's gone. Hey, chief.
budget amendment process. Mr. Tillman?
There was some question as to whether or not we could change that to reduce the number of council people that it would take to approve an amendment to the budget. And the answer is pretty clearly no, because Maryland law actually provides that under local government Article 5-205, that a municipality may spend money for a purpose different from the purpose for which the money was appropriated, or spend money not appropriated at the time of the annual levy if approved by a 2/3 vote of all the individuals elected to the legislative body, which in our case is 4, because I think
Right.
it's 3.35 and we don't have any partial people.
Depends on the day.
Okay,
So, I mean, that's just a mandate from state law that we cannot change.
well, thank you for the clarification. We appreciate it. You know if the chief's coming?
She's not, but I'm pulling up the,
Okay.
give me a second. What I can tell you, is it okay if we move to that item? What I can tell you is that I know that the animal control vehicle in question was hit by a civilian vehicle and damaged beyond repair, or total. There was frame damage. So the insurance company has totaled it. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the council packet. Okay. So, insurance adjustments were received in the amount of $4,300. The cost or the adjustment that we need of $6,655 and the $4,300 in total will enable us to acquire the new vehicle or a used vehicle. And the additional funds total $11,958. Now, both are insurance proceeds, so they'll be combined together and used to acquire that new vehicle.
Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, we'll move forward.
And sorry about the misunderstanding.
No, okay.
Chief didn't realize it had
That's okay.
been placed on tonight's agenda.
Okay, that'll move forward then. We've pulled the Carter study plan because it was not ready for an update. And the next item on the list is the unsolicited newspapers. But they're not here yet. In your packet, we sent out, I met with them last week sometime. Yeah, last week. And they asked, they were going to meet, and they did meet, and they came up with a proposal that you have before you. And I've reviewed it. I'd like to get your comments on it before we make a decision. Nate, you want to come up? You've seen it too, right?
I'm looking at it now, yes.
Great, okay. Any comments about the proposal?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
I don't see where it's significantly different from anything that they have now. I mean, if they're asking for 2 weeks to see if they can get their act together because we've called them on it finally, then that's what we should call this. But this isn't, I really don't think that this is any different than, I mean, it was clear when the gentleman from Wycomico Weekly was here. he smiled and said, "It's wonderful to partner with you, but if you do this, basically, we're gonna sue you," is basically what he said. He did that with a smile on his face, and had I been able to do that, say that to people and done it with a smile on my face, maybe my life would have been different.
Oh, you've done that with a smile on.
You know you have.
But it didn't seem to me, when I read, I don't know really what I was expecting from them, because they said, "Hey, let us go work on it." But I read this, and had I not known that this was going on and read this, I would think to myself, isn't this exactly what we're doing now? But that was only my thoughts on it. I
Okay.
will yield to the rest of the group if that's.
I don't have any strong opinions.
I mean, would it still behoove us to put together the submission form on the website so people could do it that way too? I don't think we need a ordinance or resolution for something like that. I mean, I think it's just something, the mayor wants to have this for people to, and then set it up so they get the emails too. I mean, that was more, when we got to that was more of a convenience thing.
Right.
I think then it also lets us know if a resident put it on there, and then if we get a complaint from a constituent, then, somebody can follow up on it, Susan, and say, hey, these people a month and a half ago submitted this, and they're still getting the newspapers.
Right.
I think that was more what that was for.
Papers for them.
Yeah, because we weren't, we took out the fine piece of the legislation, which really is basically, don't do this, we're gonna slap you on the wrist, but we're not gonna, there's no monetary fine for it. But creating the do not deliver list was, I think, a convenience to citizens and to help streamline the process, where if it's more than just, so if somebody doesn't want either paper, they don't have to waste their time contacting either paper multiple times. They can set it on there, have a disclaimer, this could take 2 to 4 weeks for them to process it, and then, if you, in 2 months, if you're still getting it, reach out to this person at Housing Community Development so they can follow up. I don't know what anybody's thoughts on that.
April?
Hey, Mr. McClellan,
You're done.
you're done.
It's all done.
I like when you guys. Do I pass?
You passed.
Well,
We'll keep you.
thank you.
Yes,
Good
sir.
for coming.
I feel as though the companies or the distributors should be given a grace period. I really do too, because it takes a while. It does, you just can't issue something and then think it's gonna work overnight, or they're gonna just stop immediately. So I think that they should be given a grace period. I think 2 weeks is sufficient. I think 2 weeks is sufficient, enough time for, the recourse to take place. And after 2 weeks, I don't like the idea of not finding people, because if you find them, you hold their feet to the fire. I'm kind of like, yeah, you hold their feet to the fire. You make it so it's like, it's etched in stone. It's etched in stone. Because when you say that you're not gonna find them, then they're more reluctant not to do it.
The only question I have is, I did not, as I watched that whole exchange, I did not like Mr. Janis's approach. It was more confrontational than I thought was necessary. And I didn't meet with the folks from the Press Association, but I think the two of
Yeah.
you did. I don't know if
met
anybody
with
else did.
I met with
Check.
the executive director of Delmarva News Association, who was very open and very upfront about the approach that was taken that evening, and
She wasn't endorsing that approach
she
either.
wasn't endorsing that approach.
So my,
Um,
I'm sorry, I didn't
And
mean
the
to-
other thing that I think it's gonna take longer than 2 weeks before we get a feeling on it. I would suggest, and again, it's up to everybody that's here, but I would suggest that we wait and maybe give it 2 months because I know that if the guy who calls me, if he doesn't call me in 2 months, something's happened. And I know there's a couple other guys that have called individually. And we should see if there's no improvement. The thing that is different, Jim, and I think if you look at they're actually gonna audit themselves. And not only are they gonna audit themselves, but they're gonna be audited by the Delmarva Association. And I think that it's important that they're gonna see how they do. And they also have action plans in case of storms. And they've also committed to the gutters, which is an easy one to see. We can see that as well. We can always put the legislation in. To try to legislate something like that, if you don't have a fine, is gonna be very, very difficult. So I would suggest, let's see if they can clean up their act. And if they don't, we've got the legislation ready to go and we just enact it.
I mean, would it still, do we need legislation to set up the list, like, where we can communicate to residents, hey, if you don't want this, go here, and it'll go to,
We can put on their contact because it'd be faster, they said it'd be faster if they go direct to them.
well, if we do an email submission form on our website, and the recipient addresses are those individuals
Just
that
forward.
both, it just automatically goes to them. And then we get a copy of it, and it can form a list in that submission form that we know the people, their names, their addresses, their phone numbers. We don't list it publicly, but we have it. And then also, should we forward them regularly our list of vacant properties in the city? That in addition to
Yes.
this, hey, these are registered vacant properties in our city, do not deliver to these addresses.
Yeah, and I spoke to Susan about that last time, so we're gonna make sure that we, if we're not already doing that, that we do add that to just the
That they can add it to their list, and then that way they have the residents who requested, and then they have a list of vacant properties. But, you know, I mean, because this is great that they're gonna communicate to city residents, but they're putting all the information in the publications that the people don't read, that we pick up and we drop it in our
I'm gonna
recycling
leave the
bin.
number for you to call and the thing that you're not gonna read.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the,
It sounds like something I tried to sell my mom in high school.
yeah, I mean, that's the only part of that.
Okay, what's your pleasure?
My question for the legal department is, in the places that don't get these things delivered, is it because there is a specific geographic area that homeowners are a part of that petition and say in their covenants or whatever, these things, no solicitation? Why is that okay in some places but not okay in our neighborhood? Why is it that
Well, I would,
places that are more, that are, have, I want to know why it's us.
You're
And I
talking-
want to know why it's not places where houses
Are you talking
are
about gated
$600,000.
Gated communities.
Are you, I was gonna say.
No, not even that.
Okay, well, the covenants generally are not government action. That's
Okay.
when you accept the covenants, you have sort of entered into a contract.
But the person
with neighbors
delivering
to
the
do
paper
that.
doesn't have to accept the covenants. They can
Yeah.
come in and say what we were told last time, oh, by the way, there are these, you know,
Right.
these things in the
Right.
Constitution, and you better, wink, wink, know what I'm talking about when, you know, when he gets up and speaks. How come those places don't have these newspapers delivered to them, but our neighborhoods do? Is it just respect?
I think you'd have to ask the newspapers that question, why they're honoring that in those communities.
I just don't understand why it's perceived to be nicer and different out there and not where I live. And that is, we have enough problems with non-conforming uses and enough problems with group homes and enough problems with C, D, E, F, and G. And this, which is really the icing on the cake for some people. It's, I got enough trouble as it is. And here I come home and this thing's sitting in the gutter. Why doesn't the newspaper, why don't they sue those places out there where, you know, it's perceived, I guess, to be where realtors want to sell houses?
Well, I mean, I think the answer is if the newspaper wanted to, as long as it's not locked, they could still ride through on a public roadway and throw them in their yards.
So it is respect.
It may be. That's what I say. I think you'd have to ask them why they may or may not do it in certain neighborhoods. I don't know. But you certainly, you know, I think
I mean,
I'm in agreement that
if
you could
Newtown wanted
establish
to
a
get together,
public
or
list.
Sumter Point wanted to get together, or Poets Corner wanted to get together and say, we are this geographic area that sits on a map, it says right here, this is our area. If we want to draw a line around this area and send it to the newspapers and say, please don't come here, is that going to be met with the same respect if it comes from other places? Because you don't ride around places where houses are $500,000 and see this nonsense sitting in the gutter.
Is the
You don't do it.
is the vehicle for that an HOA?
I mean, I don't know, that's really what my
Well, the
question
problem
was. If
is-
we had something like that in covenants, does that make it easier for the residents to say
Right.
collectively, we don't want this? Hardy's gonna get on me about freedom here in a second.
Well, no, but I mean, if the roadways are public
That's what I
roadways,
was gonna say, actually. The
then,
roadways are
yeah,
public.
or private roadways, if it's private property and you might have like mailboxes at the entrance and anybody who's gonna deliver has to deliver there and they're not permitted on the property, that's a different story.
I mean,
But if it
should
is a
we
public
get the old
road-
Daily Times things that used to go next to our mailboxes? You remember those? But
Yeah.
we actually had two of them. We could get a picture of Greg Bassett on one, and a picture of that other man on the other, and my little check mark next to Greg Bassett's picture, but not the other guy.
You know,
It's just frustrating when the calls that you get are for a myriad of things, and then this one comes and.
I think maybe part of what you're talking about is, it's similar to like apartment complexes. I think there are some neighborhoods, and I don't know, Jack, where you live, I don't know,
We have a homeowners association.
but that
Everybody
road
gets-
in there, is that a public road or is that a
Oh, yeah.
private
Yeah.
road?
No, it's a city street.
Okay, but I guess it's different for like Mill Pond Village, that's a private
It-
road, that's not,
I'm not sure if it's, that's why I asked the question about gated communities
Right.
that are locked. I don't know. I don't know how you do that.
we don't have many of those.
No,
gated communities.
not in the city one, but in the other.
Not
This
many of the others.
proposal that you
Yeah,
have,
that's
Yeah.
what there is not.
this
though.
proposal, I mean, unless I'm reading it incorrect, I don't see anything where the newspapers are gonna share with you the do not call list, this list that they're gonna be auditing it. So the city will really have no way to double check to see that it's really being done. And I think really, if you're gonna agree to this, fine, I think they should share with you those Salisbury citizens who have asked that they be put on the do not call, but do not deliver list. At least to share that information, otherwise the city will have no way of knowing.
Oh, except for the phone calls.
Ex-
Yeah.
I mean,
that-
you'll get phone calls,
Kinda
but you
hard
won't
to-
know if they're legitimate phone calls or if the newspaper has failed, you'll just have no idea. You'll be right where you are now, wondering whether they did what they said they were gonna do.
And I think simply just having like the option on the website, people can go, we're able to track the number of people who don't want to deliver to home to some extent.
My problem is actually just delivering them to abandoned houses, and you know they're abandoned, and we just.
Well, they're gonna, Julia said that they're gonna inform them of the
Yeah,
vacant
because
house.
I actually, out walking the other day, I was made aware of some, it was told me, look, there's abandoned papers. And they were in front of the papers, and they were in front of an abandoned house, and I was like, I can't say anything. I mean, they were there for me to see. And you had to know it was an abandoned house. You could see right through it, so you
Yeah.
had to know, so.
And so one of their items on here where they say measurable results, they do say, we ask that the city collect complaints over the next few weeks so that we can ensure that those addresses and complaints are addressed and to test the changes to the system. Which goes back to my, let's just go ahead and create a form on the website where they can get a copy of it, we get a copy of it, and then they can verify that it's been, that's the best way for us to do it. So then we have some form of hard documentation that people have requested it. And I don't know if you give them an option to select, which one they don't want. That might be another option too, have both papers on there listed. Because there's probably one that I would like to receive that I don't get, because they don't deliver to my neighborhood. But
Subtle, subtle.
There's one that I don't.
Well, the other thing it would do, what that would do, is we would know where the complaints are coming from. Which one they're directed to.
So could we model it like the street light is out, here's the contact information, here's the
And
Yeah.
just zip it right through to them.
A few minutes ago, at some point, I got an image in my head of what like a web form could look like, and and I was thinking the same thing that Mira was saying was, identify, what it is that you want addressed, and it doesn't even have to be just newspapers. I mean, there could be a variety of things
That's
that
true.
fall into the category of. Right, you've received a tax bill and you don't want it, or it's not yours potentially. But no, I think we could just add that into the city app and website.
So in combination with what they're saying and what,
Yeah. And instead, if you click on that, instead of sending an email to the right city, staff person to do something about it, it could send an email to, it could automatically generate an email
Yeah,
that goes
It
to
could almost be like
the
a
publisher.
comment, question, or concern form.
What's that?
People have comments.
Oh,
they have
I'm sorry.
questions, They have concerns.
Yeah, if they check, hey, I don't want to receive this one, I don't want to receive this one, you can set up both of them where both will get an email. But if they just check one, then just one will get an email.
right.
That should be pretty, Bill could probably figure that out.
I'm sure it can. Okay, let's try again.
Could we come back in a couple weeks and see what's on the website and
I think we need a little bit longer. I would say,
It might,
2
just the web piece might take us a little bit because we got the new website, getting ready to come online and all.
they're ready to go.
My understanding was there's a presentation at 6.
We're ahead of schedule.
Okay. Will that not happen since you're ahead?
Would you like to?
Well, it's not me, it's
It's-
the Maryland Delaware BC Press Association. So,
Okay.
how about we?
I can answer questions, but I,
Well, it seems, is it your conclusion that we're not gonna move forward with our own legislation now?
Oh, no, it's up to you guys.
I was saying, there's no point in creating a piece of legislation if we're not gonna be having a fine aspect to it, because it's not really anything we can hold. I think really what we wanna do is collect data and be able to have a measurable thing to say, hey, this is how many people have said they don't want this one or a total. And I think that way, that's something that it's gonna take a little bit to put it together and then to have, for people to actually use it.
Question, comment, or concern?
So let's say an entire block does come together and then they all go to the website, they fill out the portal, they say they don't want it. And then it becomes the city that, for whatever reason, the distributors aren't heeding the request. It gets sticky once the city has to enforce that.
Well, that's why I say if we can,
Just forward the stuff to them
Uh-huh.
and let them do it and see how many complaints we have.
And then if we see that they aren't being responsive, then we're
Then we
looking at
gotta
new
do something.
legislation.
Yeah.
Then it's a different question, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the only question that comes up then is that, I mentioned the presentation that was made, but that question of lawsuit, or of violating First Amendment rights, then we just have to walk that very careful,
Well,
or very tight rope of what are we likely
That's
to
what we
achieve
need
in that battle.
when I met with the
Yeah. Yeah,
executive
that's
director,
what I was saying.
I told her explicitly, this is not a First Amendment issue whatsoever.
Did we ever find out from Alexandria or Arlington, theirs is passed, it's on the books, and they've never been taken to court?
That's my understanding.
Do you have the executive director's number? Could you call her?
I don't, I'm only sort of involved in this.
Oh, okay.
It's directly involved.
Let me see
Okay.
if I have it, what's your last name?
I'm-
My understanding, I was reading she's coming to do a presentation because of the precedent-setting potential.
So is she coming to, again, without saying it, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'm gonna sue you if you do this?
No, that never came up in
That I
that
don't
thing.
know.
I don't
Then-
think so.
I'm not sure what her.
What's her
argument
presentation about?
Do you remember her name?
is. Rebecca Simon.
I might have it.
April, you got any more comments?
Yes. Anybody else want to say?
If we're
I
gonna
have her
keep
phone
talking about
number.
this.
You don't, yes, I know. Yes.
Neat and sensitive.
You
We'll
have
see
to-
him, we'll see him in a minute, his head is screwed up. He'll shoot him to the ceiling.
I'll do my light and bring it to you.
Yeah, please.
You have it.
I have enough problem with vision.
Nate, do you have any recommendations?
Well, I can give my 2 cents if you'd like it.
That's
Rebecca,
up to Jack.
this is Jack Heath.
Give us 5
Are-
cents.
Good. Are you on your way? Yes, very early. Good. Thank you very much. She's on her way over. She's having coffee at Maine Roots.
Oh, that's nice.
So she will be here in a couple minutes.
Wonder if she left the paper out there.
You know what, I'm full. No more
All right.
chocolate for you.
Pass it on.
Okay.
What is her?
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go over my financial disclosure form for myself.
Jim,
Rebecca Siner?
what's her last name?
Snyder.
Snyder.
Snyder?
We take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute recess.
Nice.